Breakout candidates with real value discount. We are looking at guys who can get you the most bang for your buck and have the opportunity to have career years. We've got wide receivers going outside the top 25, a late round quarterback with real QB1 potential, and a running back that literally has no other option than to break out. Let's dive in. I wanted to lead off with this one with Josh Downs because this is one that I think people need to take a lot more seriously. Alec Pierce is recovering from surgery, and it isn't tracking as quickly as I would have thought. Now, I haven't minded drafting Pierce because his ADP hasn't risen to an extremely unreasonable point. But the reality is that he's got the injury working against him, and then on top of that, if Daniel Jones has any lingering effects from his injury, the one position that would logically suffer the most is the guy who goes deep. So there's a reality where Josh Downs has far better consistency and stability this year, especially early on from a fantasy perspective compared to Pierce. Pierce would have the higher ceiling as we've seen in the past, but Josh Downs would have the safer floor on a week-to-week basis. Now, I've talked to you guys about the fact that both Tyler Warren and Josh Downs should greatly benefit from the exit of Michael Pittman specifically. So this doesn't even have to come down to Alec Pierce. Michael Pittman was a big piece of this and why we should like Josh Downs this year. Pittman is obviously twice the size of Josh Downs, but Pittman's ADOT was relatively small. He was more of a short to intermediate area possession receiver, and Josh Downs will benefit directly from his exit. Josh Downs had an ADOT of 8.4 last year, and guess who also had an ADOT of exactly 8.4? Michael Pittman. They were also extremely similar in terms of yards per route run. Again, they're very different players, but there's 110 targets that are exiting this offense. Do not underestimate how much of this could naturally slide to Downs. Downs should be the third look behind Alec Pierce and Tyler Warren, and that's a nice spot for him. And he has shown the ability to be able to handle volume and offer a very solid floor, even last year in a very crowded group of pass catchers. But again, if the Pierce injury makes him a risk to start the season early on, or a risk in terms of being at his overall upside for the remainder of the season, Downs could definitely have heftier volume overall, especially earlier on, and maybe even be the second look in this offense. He could be a weekly flex option for you. Hear me out on this one before you make a negative comment. I want everyone to put their view of Quentin Johnston as a rookie in the past and buy into him as a breakout candidate this season, because Johnston's ranking of wide receiver 41 is just way too low. He is a massive value pick that is poised for a leap in 2026. And before you say, but Tera, he never catches the ball. I'm not drafting a player who drops the ball like that. Stop it. Yes, you are. You are actually. There is a huge likelihood that you will draft at least one player who had more drops last year than Quentin Johnston. And you might even do it in the first round. Yeah, there's multiple guys up there. Yes, certain players have drop stigmas, but other players that actually drop the ball more are rarely mentioned as a reason not to target them. It's often applied situationally, and Johnston is always one of those guys that everyone applies it situationally with. Johnston wasn't even one of the players that had the most drops last season, not even close, not in the top 25. And before you say it, well, it's not the amount of drops, it's the critical moments that they come in. Yeah, cool, but that doesn't actually matter from a fantasy perspective specifically. It only matters what their coach thinks. And the Chargers coaching staff really likes Quentin Johnston, clearly. And they picked up his fifth-year option. If they don't have a problem with it, neither should we. Now on to the fun stuff, right? We acknowledge all of the positives that are ahead for the Chargers with Justin Herbert in an upgraded offensive scheme that will push more pass volume with a healthier and reinforced offensive line, and the benefits for Ladd McConkey and Amari Hampton. All those benefits also directly apply to Quentin Johnston as the primary deep threat in this offense, and it sounds like the Chargers also want to get more out of him in addition to the deep threat opportunities. He was on the cusp last season, and he did finish as wide receiver 25 last season in average fantasy points per game and half PPR, despite the fact that the Chargers' pass game struggled significantly with the injuries to the offensive line. Before the injuries to Joe Alt, and also Quentin Johnston had an injury as well, before those injuries, Johnston was looking and operating like the wide receiver one over everyone else. Johnston is giving me Michael Pittman 2025 vibes. Obviously not the same play style, right? We talked about that. But the fact that Pittman also had those same preconceived notions of needing to be pushed down in rankings, despite the fact that he had clear upgrades in his offense, and he ended up having the best year of his career. Keep that in mind. Now let's talk Rome Odunze. The Chicago wide receiver core is very interesting. Now, ultimately, I do think Colston Loveland should and could be the target leader here. I am targeting him in drafts, but it is any man's opportunity to step up and be the target leader. And right now, the rankings very clearly show who analysts think will be the best fantasy asset. Colston Loveland is tight end 3 with an overall ranking of 41. Luther Burden is wide receiver 24 with an overall ranking of 49. And Rome Odunze is the lowest ranked at wide receiver 29 with an overall ADP of 63. Not a massive discount, but pretty good value for a guy who has legitimate wide receiver 1 upside. Looking at the Bears' overall numbers last year, it's tough because Rome Odunze was actually the target leader, but really no one had over 90 targets, and Burden and Loveland were rookies that had to work their way and push the veterans out, the old regime of Cole Kmet and Olamide Zaccheaus. And yes, when we specifically look at Loveland, again, compared to the wide receivers, I can definitively say that there were multiple points at the end of the season where he outperformed both Burden and Odunze. Now, Odunze was dealing with an injury, keep that in mind. But I cannot actually say that Burden outperformed Odunze or showed anything definitively better that would say that he needs to be the higher ranked player much further ahead of Rome Odunze. A guy who was a top 10 pick, right up there with Malik Neighbors, right? So now I can say I understand why Burden is ranked higher in theory, because Burden has the lower average depth of target. Theoretically, he would be the higher possession receiver with less volatility, right? Odunze has had the highest ADOT of the starters last season and was often just used to send Odunze downfield, and any accuracy issues with Caleb Williams just made things more volatile. But the rankings are operating as if the offense is going to be exactly the way that it was last season. DJ Moore no longer exists in this offense, and his absence will open up opportunities for everyone, including Rome Odunze, to get more varied usage than just the deep ball. It is still entirely possible that Odunze is the guy that we actually want here in the Chicago receiving core. We know for a fact that he can get us 7 receptions on 10 targets for 100 plus yards very easily. I would argue he does in fact have the highest ceiling for sure compared to Burden. And at wide receiver 29 ranking, yeah, I am more than willing to draft him and see how this pans out. There is no reason that we should just ignore the start that we had from Odunze last season, where he had 15 plus fantasy points games in 4 straight games with 5 touchdowns. Why can he not push forward for a breakout this year? I am not sure that I am bold enough to actually draft Tyler Shough as my QB1, but I am perfectly fine with him as a QB2 in Superflex and drafting him in 1 QB leagues alongside a more stable, cost-effective quarterback like Matt Stafford or Jared Goff. Do not be shocked if Tyler Shough ends up being your preferred weekly starter this season because he's in a fantastic situation. The Saints have done so right by him this offseason. They upgraded the offense with Travis Etienne. They added Jordan Tyson in the draft. They even added a potential wide receiver 3 in Bryce Lance, or perhaps we could see maybe Devon Vele step up under a full season under Kellen Moore. Like, there's plenty of options here. The addition of Jordan Tyson specifically is huge because the Saints had an incredibly depleted receiving core last season. Olave was fantastic, but it was literally just, and Juwan Johnson was cool too, right? Enjoyed that. But it was literally just him and Juwan Johnson. Tyler Shough couldn't even benefit from having a strong receiving back since Alvin Kamara was cooked and then he got injured as well. In a perfect world, Tyler Shough will have one of the most formidable wide receiver duos in the league. And Shough also has the benefit of consistency because he will continue through the same exact system, no major changes, pretty much the addition of weapons. And we love Kellen Moore for fantasy football. He is a guarantee for pass volume no matter how much the defense improves. Literally everything is pointing in a positive direction for Tyler Shough to build on his 2025 debut, which was surprisingly strong. I'm not going to lie. He surprised me there. Shough played 11 games, but really he only started about half the season. He pushed very good volume with over 2,000 yards. He actually averaged over 30 attempts per game. He showed rushing upside as well. Excellent pass catchers, guaranteed volume, rushing upside, and a very suspect division. That is a great combination for a breakout season. Not every breakout candidate is safe. Well, I can say with 100% confidence that Quentin Johnston and Josh Downs will not be complete busts. They will give you something. There's a certain floor that they have there because they are factual starters and, what should be fairly decent pass volume pushing offenses, no matter what happens. I can't say the same thing about Jonathon Brooks because the man has a total of 9 carries in his career and he's not the starter. Chuba Hubbard is the starter. And I don't even really mind drafting Chuba Hubbard because he is factually the lowest price back that you can get for someone who actually is a lead back. But the reality is that the Panthers have shown that they're more than willing to switch things up at running back and anoint a new RB1 if a running back outperforms the lead back. So this is not an indictment on Chuba Hubbard. It's just that the reality exists that there's always an opportunity here to steal a job within the Panthers offense. And Brooks is probably the only back being drafted outside the top 36 who can actually steal an incumbent, a true incumbent RB1, steal that role without there having to be an injury. That's the caveat here and why I like targeting him. The Panthers weren't a particularly efficient offense last season at all, but they definitely leaned more on the run than the pass. And while I do expect them to gradually increase pass volume, I do not expect there to be a massive leap. They want to lean on the ground. They want to stay committed to the run. The opportunity will be there for Brooks to literally take the ball and run. So yes, he is a very risky pick because we have no proof he can stay on the field. And Chuba Hubbard could just simply retain the lead back role. But you cannot ask for a better price for a running back who could theoretically just earn straight up a 3-down job. And at the very least, he is a handcuff that would stumble into a big workload if Chuba Hubbard were to go down because the Panthers have already confirmed their goal is to work in Brooks as a receiving back. So he does already even have that edge over Trevor Etienne. And I highly doubt that Etienne can outdo him on the ground. And A.J. Dillon is fairly cooked. So the path is very specifically clear for Jonathon Brooks here in multiple ways. And yes, I know technically he does have to have a career year because it's not possible for him to not have one if he is physically on the field. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tera Time. I am also live every Wednesday on YouTube at 8 p.m. EST, so make sure that you stop by and chat. It is always a good time. You can ask me any questions that you want. You can also subscribe to my Substack if you want to support me another way. And if you are looking for new fantasy football tools in 2026, look at Player Profiler. You can use my promo code TERA for 25% off at Player Profiler.